I knew of him before I met him. My father, who was a lawyer, first of all, a state employee, and then a lawyer in Chattahoochee, Florida, was a great fan of Claude Pepper. And I think I first met him in the 1950 campaign, the campaign he ran against Smathers. My memory is he came through Chattahoochee, Florida, and my father introduced me to him. I then saw something of him in later years. I saw him. He came to speak at the University of Florida Law School when I was a student. The student body was extremely hostile to Claude Pepper. They were all fans of that charlatan George Smathers, and and Pepper gave a speech that was so good that he just won everybody over. He did something that I've never quite seen before. I was in the back of the auditorium, and he started describing the possibility that America had, and he was using the launch of a rocket to as his metaphor. So he described seeing this rocket being launched, and as he described it, his hands lifted up. His voice kept describing the rocket, and all of a sudden, I could see all the heads of the people in the audience ahead of me turning up to look in the sky for the rocket. I mean, it was just a wonderful performance. He was a great speaker. Shortly after that, I left law school, went to Miami to practice, and he was involved in his first congressional race then. And I participated in that campaign. I canvassed for him. I did some work, learned a little bit about politics in Miami by working on his campaign. There actually were two important congressional campaigns that year. Claude Pepper was running. It was his first campaign. Not was had opposition. I worked a little bit in both campaigns, but I was particularly drawn to Claude Pepper and what his performances over the years. I dealt with him when I became dean of the FSU Law School. I met with him and his staff director in the congressional dining room and pitched him about a program to provide technical legal assistance to Caribbean countries, something called a Caribbean Law Institute, and that got done right on the spot. I mean, talk about something that was easy to do. He turned to his staff director and said, "Tom, isn't the Foreign Affairs Appropriation Committee coming over for a markup sometime in the next week?" Tom said yes, and Phil Pepper said, "Well, tell them that they can get a rule; it'll be approved so long as they include this item in it." That's all I do to get a very significant program developed for the USAID. Of course, that's one of the notorious earmarks, but that was the way things were done back in those days. He visited some in Tallahassee, and when he did, he would frequently stop by. He happened to be in Tallahassee the day of Governor Leroy Collins' 80th birthday, and I had a birthday party, a small group of people for lunch to honor Collins, and Pepper just happened to said, "Listen, I was free for lunch." And I said, "Well, actually got luncheon plans, but one." So one of the great memories of my life was being in the room with Claude Pepper and Roy Collins and hearing them talk about government and politics. So over the years, I had some contact with him. I did not work in his office, have that kind of familiarity, but I was always a fan of Claude Pepper. Let's see, it would have been sometime, I guess, is 86, something in that area, 86, 87. I found him just always, every dealing I've ever had with him. He was, courtly sounds like like such a corny word to use, but he was always kind to people. Even in the stress of campaign, I never saw him get angry at people who were working in his campaign. I never saw him say anything rude to other people. And dealing with me, he was just, I always felt like he was just very generous to me. I think he liked my father, and I know my father liked him very much. And I think that may have helped me build a good relationship with him. I don't remember when I first heard about him. Truly, I was at Florida State University at that time. Um, my memory is the foundation was already organized. I was not on the board at the time I'm thinking back, but there was some thought about trying to reorient the foundation and to bring it to FSU. Part of the incentive for doing that was it's possible to take the foundation funds, which had not been growing, and by contributing those to the FSU Foundation, then create a fund of money that would be essentially double because of the matching gift program that the state then had in place. So I've worked for a considerable period of time to try to put together that arrangement for which the donation of the Pepper Foundation funds would be made and matched by the state. And that really was my close contact with the operation of the foundation. I think I was FSU president. I forget the date. But, I think everybody, once they understood it, really liked the idea. I very much supported it. I thought that, to be candid, a lot of our social sciences were oriented towards a perspective that was really quite different from that of colored pepper. And the idea of getting a center that would help deal with some of the issues that were important to colored pepper would, I thought, given a great diversity of intellectual opinion at the university. We have, particularly in our economics department, some wonderful economists, but they're very conservative. They're Chicago School economists. But by getting the Pepper Foundation associated with FSU, we then had people from nursing school and public administration and other schools start dealing with some issues like care of the aging, all kinds of things that were not of much interest to people at FSU before the Pepper Foundation came aboard. And as a result of that contact, we recruited some really remarkable people. Joe Cordagno was outstanding expert in care of the aging who came to FSU as a direct result of the Pepper arrangement. So again, we began to build up a capacity in some areas that I thought was to be involved in, and I attribute that to the respect for Pepper's heritage. I don't remember all the details, but it had several moving parts. It had to be some facility. And so, and again, there's matching money available for facilities. But we really tried to lay out a full plan. If the money, my memory is it was $10 million. That was the corpus of the Pepper Foundation at that time. I may be wrong about that number, but somewhere in that range. And if that was donated, we had to really then engineer how much of that would go to facilities and how much would go to the program. And again, I can't tell you sitting here now what the exact split was, but those things were accomplished. And we worked out arrangements so that the Pepper operation, the Pepper Foundation operation, would not have to worry about paying rent because they would have these facilities available to them. They wouldn't have to worry about utilities, telephone, and even computer services, that kind of thing, because those would be available through the university. So there was an arrangement which I felt at the time and feel today allowed Pepper to do some things that it would not have been able to do otherwise. Well, Tom Stulak had been the senator's staff director and general counsel back when he was chair of the Rules Committee. And Tom was extremely important. A FSU professor, a person who I'd worked with back when I was dean of the law school, had been my associate dean named Steve McNamara, was a good friend of Tom's. And so the three of us, but there were other people very much involved who were leading the foundation. But I'd have to say that Tom Stulak, in terms of the hard decisions, was very much in leadership. I don't remember any change. The site was selected. Actually, I think it had been previously selected as a possible site for a building. There was a proposal at one point to put the Pepper facility on Landis Green, and it would have filled in a green space that was there. I vetoed it. I did not want to see just a wall of buildings. I wanted to see some open space around that Landis Green. And so we then used this area that had been designated for a building of some kind. And it was not, I got considerable pushback on this because a number of people who were associated with social sciences wanted it right next to the Bellamy building. And but I used the authority I had to say that could not be done. I don't think we had major hurdles. We had some difficulties with construction. We had some difficulties with the architect, trying to get the architect to understand what we wanted to accomplish in the project. Again, this has got some special purpose elements to it. We need to have the museum element the function. We needed to have enough of a auditorium to be able to conduct programs. And the auditorium actually was constructed because of a separate gift. A separate board made a separate gift. Shepard and Senator Pepper had been old friends. They had organized a savings and loan together back in the early Roosevelt days, and were remained very close friends. So I've always, every time I go past the building and see the broad auditorium next to the Pepper Center, I think I really like that. So we continue to raise money to make the whole project work. But Shepard Board was very forthcoming, and you could say that was a hurdle to raise that additional money, but it honestly was not a great hurdle because there was so much fondness, admiration for Claude Pepper that the Shepherd Board wanted to do something. I think we had a few problems with construction. That site was not ideal. There were some foundation problems with it. But those are the kinds of things that pop up all the time when you're in an area that has the kind of subsoil that's in Tallahassee. So I don't think there's anything major. And in terms of programs, again, I think it went pretty smoothly. Francis gave an awful lot of energy to making everything work out, and the board paid a lot of attention to the programs. There were times when I felt like the board itself did not fully understand the opportunities that were being presented to them. But again, that kind of difference in viewpoint would be true virtually any board that the university organized. I think we dealt with some fairly small projects that at a time when we should have been putting resources into things that would have more impact. But that's sort of the nature of this kind of a board. You know, I have to say that there was really not much mission drift in the sense that the foundation operation did not sort of go on into other sexy things. They really stayed with the issues that were very much identified with Claude Pepper, trying to worry about the health of seniors and even the health of programs that serve seniors. There was considerable discussion, as you recall, about Social Security and what should be done to it over the long term. And I think the scholars who were associated with the Pepper Center contributed a great deal to that discussion over the years. But there were, I always felt like we could have done a little bit more in terms of international affairs orientation, but we didn't have bottomless resources, so we had to make some choices. And I think by and large, the right choices were made. Well, it would not have been possible on the scale that the Philippines developed out of this. So there was a great amount of sentiment on the Pepper Foundation board to conduct a fundraising campaign, but the people who wanted to do this really didn't know much about fundraising, and honestly, they're never willing to take full advantage of the kind of resource that the university operated. Here, there's a university that has this large staff of people who have fundraising as their assignment. You have people who are researchers. You have specialists in terms of plan giving, a whole range of things that are possible. But I could never quite get the Pepper leadership to make use of the resources of the foundation. And I never understood that. There may have been some problems if the chemistry wasn't right with all the people who needed to be involved. But I have to say that one thing we never did very well, apart from the Shepherd Broad gift, was I don't think we did a very good job of fundraising at a time when Claude Pepper's name was still very well known and very highly regarded. I'd have to say he was very well known, obviously, in Florida, but he was a national figure. He was on elderly issues. There was nobody who came close to Claude Pepper. And think about the number of people who honored Claude Pepper for his leadership in this area, including the first President Bush, who I think Senator Pepper was quite ill. I think he was in Walter Reed Hospital when the president came and gave him the Presidential Medal for his service. But national organizations. If you ask people at AARP or other organizations who was the most important political figure in the United States, they're going to say Claude Pepper, because he had done more. He'd been so smart. I don't know if you've heard the story about Pepper being approached by the Speaker of the House. I forget who this was at the time. May have been O'Neill. But the Speaker saying to Senator Pepper, Claude, you've got the seniority now to get any committee that you want. And I, the Speaker, have been assuming that you want to develop the committee that handles elder affairs appropriation. I don't remember what that was called. And Claude Pepper said, Mr. Speaker, that is a very generous offer, but I think I'll take rules.
Oh, wow.
If he had rules committee, he was going to be able to deal in any way he wanted to deal, because he was actually going to be sitting there with his thumb on all of the legislation. And so when he became rules chairman, he was a national figure because of his interest in a particular area. But he was a national figure also because he's one of the most powerful men in the nation. And he understood it. He'd been around enough to know he didn't want to some committee that could be brushed aside when he could push his open quite handily if he was chairman of the rules. And he'd let other people handle some of the details, but he'd make sure that large that was really, looking back on it, very smart of him. But I'd have to say that the gap was not so much in disagreement. It was just a matter of emphasis. There were not people here that were engaged on issues that I thought were very significant for Floridians, and that and my thought was that the Florida University ought to have authorities who had knowledge of and had an interest in these issues, and those issues that Claude Pepper had advanced so well, the ones we just talked about. So the gap really was, as I say, not a gap in terms of philosophy so much as a gap in interest. And you get into a university and you understand that the people who have truly national distinction are not dealing with every issue in the world. They tend to focus on a set of issues, study them thoroughly, know more about those issues than other people, and they get called on to committees and to help with projects that relate to those issues. And that's what I really wanted to see happen at FSU, and the person who represented that was Claude Pepper, and the foundation, which had been organized in his name because of the appropriation from Congress, was the Pepper Foundation. I felt that by bringing the Pepper Foundation into a close relationship with the university, we would begin to move the university into scholarship that was significant for this segment of the Florida population. I think he may have died before those particular discussions took place. But there was a period of time, and you never know how long that period of time is. There was a time when I believed with proper organization, we could have gone to national organizations, even national foundations, and put together program proposals that would have been, because of Pepper's name, at least been considered. And I don't think we ever did an adequate job of that. There's a lot of talk about me, but I frankly think we failed to do it. I'm not blaming other people. I was sitting there. I'm probably the person most to blame for not just pushing it. But again, we're at a point where there are these additional resources thanks to both the matching gift program and the gift from Shepherd Ball's family. And so, in some senses, we had the Pepper operation in pretty good shape. So it's awfully easy then to turn your attention to other things. And I have to confess, I did that. I don't think I spent as much time or focused on it much as the time was just spread so across all of the interest that I need to get some other things done. Even having this discussion and thinking about Claude Pepper really touches me because he was an important figure in the life of so very many people, including our life. I'm so glad to have known him.